Now call the City Council meeting of June 28th, 2021 to order. I'm going to ask Captain Williams, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, if you'd please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Captain. Jennifer, will you please call a roll?
Councilmember Avila?
Here.
Councilmember Beaver?
Here.
Councilmember Thorpe?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Duncan? Here. Mayor Bogue?
Here. So we do have a couple special presentations, and our first presentation will be the National Parks and Recreation Month, and I asked Councilmember Thorpe if he would read the bottom half of the proclamation for us.
Whereas the State of California Parks and Recreation Society has released a statewide public awareness campaign, Parks Make Life Better, to inform citizens of the many benefits of utilizing parks, facilities, programs, and services, now therefore be it resolved that the citizens of California recognize the importance of access to local parks, trails, open spaces, and facilities for the health, wellness, development, inspiration, and safety of all Californians. And be it further resolved that we declare the month of July 2021 as Parks Make Life Better Month. Now therefore be it resolved, the Mayor of City of Yucaipa, on behalf of City Council, does proclaim that July is recognized as Parks Make Life Better Month for the City of Yucaipa.
Thanks, John. And that is true, especially for Yucaipa, right? How many parks do we have, Ray?
12? 12 parks,
12 or 17?
550 acres, I think.
I thought it was
17, maybe.
Was it 17? I don't know.
You also have a representative from Senator Rosalicia Ochoa Bogue's office here this evening, if you'd like to hear from them as well. So,
Yes, come on down.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. My name is Sid Song. I am the field representative for Senator Ochoa Bogue in the city of Yucaipa, and I'd like to thank you all for having me here tonight on behalf of Senator Ochoa Bogue and recognize the tireless work and effort provided by the Yucaipa City Community Services Department. This department provides opportunities to improve the lives of the entire community by providing exceptional experiences to both families and individuals. The dedication that has gone into their quality of life enhancing projects is exemplary. And so I do have a certificate to recognize if the council permits.
Well, yeah, well, let's go ahead and have our picture taken with you since we're,
Perfect, yeah.
all right. And then we'll just stay down because I believe we have an employee introduction. Okay.
Chief Malinowski, I think you're up.
Evening, Mayor, Council. So I'd like to introduce our new medical director, Dr. Seth Dukes. He's assuming the duties that Dr. Jeff Grange had performed since about 2007, 2008. So, and we thank him for his service. Dr. Seth Dukes attended medical school at the University of Texas Medical Branch. He completed his residency in emergency medicine at Loma Linda University. After residency, Dr. Dukes completed fellowship training in EMS and disaster medicine at State University of New York Upstate Medical University. During that time, he also worked as a SWAT paramedic with the Syracuse Police Department. Dr. Dukes is a board certified in both emergency medicine and EMS. He currently works as a full-time faculty at Loma Linda University Medical Center and as a part-time faculty at Riverside University Health System Medical Center. Dr. Dukes is also an associate program director of the EMS Fellowship Program at Loma Linda University Medical Center. He serves as the chair for both the ISMA and REMS medical advisory committees. Dr. Dukes met his wife Ruth Ann while an undergraduate, and they later married. Ruth Ann is a registered nurse, though she's currently a full-time caregiver for their 3-year-old daughter and 17-month-old son. And most importantly, they currently reside in Yucaipa. Dr. Dukes will serve as the medical director for the Yucaipa Fire Department effective July 1st. This is a required position for our paramedic services, allowing the department to purchase advanced life support equipment, medications, narcotics under the required physician's license. Having Dr. Dukes as our medical director also provides an excellent oversight for our paramedic services and will be an invaluable asset to our quality assurance, quality improvement program. Dr. Dukes will also represent the Yucaipa Fire Department at the physician level for countywide committees, which he's already heavily involved in. I'm excited to announce Dr. Dukes is our new medical director, and I look forward to a great relationship that will enhance the level of paramedic services we provide the citizens of Yucaipa and the community of Oakland. So, Dr. Dukes.
I am giving a speech, huh? All right. Oh, okay. Well, we'll get it started here. Yeah, nobody alerted me to that process. Thank you so much for having me today and this opportunity. It's been a pleasure to work with Grant trying to figure this process out. And ever since we moved here, we've been here about 5 years now. I've been itching to try to get more involved with these fine gentlemen and ladies who work in the Yucaipa Fire Department to be more a part of the city. So I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much.
Okay, so that is going to take us to public comment. I do have 2 public speakers here. The first one will be Howard Reeves. So you know, we have a 3-minute time. Really? Yes, we do.
Good evening, council members, mayor, city staff. My name is Howard Reeves. I live at 1017 Douglas Street, Calamasa. I've lived there for 53 years, and I've been involved in youth sports here in town for 53 years. But the first thing I want to do is I want to apologize to Ray Casey tonight that I have to be here, and I'm really embarrassed that I have to be here to talk about what I need to talk about. 2 years ago, almost to the day, the lights at Brian Glenn were shut down because they're not up to standard. And I've been working on those lights with different people for that full time, and I really don't know where we're at. They're still down. We still can't use them. We're just winding down. We're playing tournaments up there today, and we can't use the lights at all. And so that's something that needs to be addressed, because it's just not right. We've invested in those lights back in the mid-90s, and it's just sitting there going to waste. The second thing, if you go up Sunnyside Drive and you park there and you walk down towards the snack shack, on both sides of the sidewalk, if you look at the field to the left and the field to the right, you'll see huge brown spots in that outfield grass. And that's outrageous, guys. For the city of Yucaipa to have those fields look like that is ridiculous. The 1/3 of that property belongs to the city and 2/3 belongs to the school district. But I know the city has a contract where the city takes care of all that stuff with the school district. But it looks bad, guys. And people coming in from 29 Palms, Yucca, DHS, Banning to these tournaments, this is what they see. It's embarrassing. And the last thing was about 4 years ago, I believe, you can help correct me if you want, Ray. Before 4 years ago, I met with Ray after they took the snack shack and restroom down at 7th Street and built the new restrooms in right field, on the right field corner. I asked Ray, I said, would it be okay if I build a new snack shack there to accommodate football, Little League, and Little League, all three of them? And he said yes. And I said, well, what I need is the blueprints for the foundation and the blueprints for the building. I'm still waiting, guys. I haven't got nothing. I can't go talk to any contractor because they're going to say, where's the blueprints? I don't have them. And it's you know, and I'm fixing to turn 80 years old, guys, and I know you guys are waiting for me to pass on, so that way you don't have to deal with me no more. I'm just kidding. But anyhow, this is why I'm here tonight, and I know Justin Beaver was at the ballpark last night and talked to the American League people about the lights, and the president called me and asked me to come here tonight and talk about the lights, so I said I would. I guess my time is up. Thank you for your time, and let's get something taken care of, okay?
Thanks, Howard. I know that we are under discussion about the lighting at the baseball fields. Is that correct, Ray?
If I may, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, wasn't aware of the brown spots, and Fermin is going to be following up on that tomorrow morning, first thing. With respect to the snack shack, Howard's right. We've talked about that for a while. Arrived at the solution of the city designing the snack shack, a little bit beyond the snack shack, but the snack shack is the primary component of that, and Howard would take the lead on getting the project constructed. That design is underway. Don't know exactly where we are in the design, 50%, 60%, but I'll find out first thing in the morning. And then on the lights, Howard certainly is accurate in that we have talked about the issues relative to the lighting. It was prioritized by the Parks and Rec Commission through their goals and objectives process, I think number 2 on the list, if I remember right. And the problem with the lights is that they are, as Howard mentioned, done by volunteers years ago with a little help from some contractor folks. Musco Lighting won't recognize the poles, so we can't simply put lights on the poles as meeting their standards. And so it's a complete replacement. Maybe we do one field at a time, maybe we do 2 fields at a time. But in today's dollars, that's probably over $200,000 a field, maybe $250,000 a field with the new poles and new lighting. We did, as Howard mentioned, we worked with Howard and Little League representatives in evaluating the lighting a year and a half ago, 2 years ago now, probably recognized that it certainly doesn't meet this industry standards for foot candles in many areas of the field. And definitely need to work towards replacing those poles and lights as council looks at its priorities over this next year. And so it is definitely on the list. It was prioritized number 2, I think, by the Parks and Rec Commission, and it'll be part of your subsequent discussion with a kind of the final goals and objectives process if council approves the budget this evening. With some of the service level options that have been prioritized through the goals and objectives discussion. The intent is to come back to City Council in 30 to 45 days, maybe 60 days on the outside, and have that final goals and objectives discussion. The ARPA funding is still, the guidelines for that are still being refined. We don't know exactly where that's going to play out. There was a change last week, for example, where the guidelines freed up the broadband funding to be your entire community if need be versus just disadvantaged neighborhoods. And so They continue to refine the guidelines. I hate to bring that back to council and find that they changed the guidelines again. So we're looking at probably 45 to 60 days out for council to consider the rest of the ARPA funding that isn't in the budget tonight, and there may be some opportunity to discuss the other service level options that were previously discussed in the study session process.
All right, so in short, we are prioritizing the lighting for that. It's been in discussion, so. Thank you, Mayor. All right, good to see you. Robert Coleman.
Good evening, council. So, again, I want to thank you for volunteering your time to make our city a better place. I know that this job is demanding and takes you away from your family a lot. I have a short video that I'm going to share with you that was taken at my office last Friday. While you're watching this video, please remember that my office had no contact with this person, and our windows have a mirror tent so this person could not see in. My front office is staffed by several young ladies, and during this video, there were several young kids present, customers, and I'd ask that you please think about how you would feel if your wife or your children or your daughter was working in this office and had this going on. I also want to remind you that just 1 week earlier, there was a person that was stabbed in the same area of the city. I don't have a solution to this, but I want to make sure that the council was aware of what was going on in this part of the city. There are weekly occurrences with individuals that act in a manner like this. I'm asking you to please help us. Please come up with a solution to stop this and make our city better and safer.
Robert, that's very concerning. I have to admit, that's just amazing. I'm assuming you called PD, and is he still around?
We did call PD. They did take him away. Whether or not he's still around or not, I don't know. We have not seen him today.
All right, thanks for that, Robert. We'll definitely look into that and allocate additional resources towards that area. Thanks, Robert.
Mr. City Manager, we have that video? The city does?
I'm sorry?
Did the city have that video?
Yes, we do.
Can we bring that back to the next Public Safety Committee meeting we have so we can discuss it further, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, so that's all of public comment. That's going to take us to the consent agenda, which is items 1 through 18. Are there any items one wishes to withdraw
Mr.
for
Mayor,
discussion?
I'd like to pull 14
14? Okay,
for
so,
discussion and then possibly some further review on something related to that as
okay,
well.
so we'll withdraw 14.
Yes.
And for the record, I will abstain from item number 17, so are there any others that one wishes to withdraw?
So you're going to have to recuse yourself from 17?
I will abstain from 17, yeah.
So I move approval of the consent agenda, less item number 14, and through 16 and 18. Is that right? Omitting.
I'll be the only one abstaining from 17. So,
Okay.
yeah.
I'll second the motion, minus 14.
All right. So we have a motion and a second for items 1 through 18 minus 14. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Should we take that now, Ray?
Yes, please. I would take number 14.
Okay. I believe, is this fall under Fermin or is this Ben?
Ben, why don't you take this?
All right, good evening, city council members. So this is case number 20-085. It's oak tree permit for the removal of 8 Coast live oak trees located at 37358 Lime Kiln Drive to accommodate the development of a single-family residence on that residential property. The oak tree permit process was initiated through the planchette process for the subject residents. Through that, they had done some work to assess the overall oak trees, and then the city's landscape architect, contract landscape architect and city arborist Steve Franken also did a review of that. Through the building permit process, the site design had been modified to reduce the number of impacts related to the home placement as well as utility connections. And so this is kind of the minimum that was to be impacted through the process and resulted in kind of a significant reduction of the oak trees that would be impacted. And then finally, these oak trees would be mitigated for the healthy ones or the ones that are kind of at the C rating at a 3-to-1 ratio for one of the more, I guess, healthy or kind of more prominent trees, and then 1-to-1 for the remaining trees consistent with the city's resolution. And then as part of the recommendations that were done, provided by Steve Franken, is that there's some other kind of dead trees on site that he recommended be removed to help kind of clear some space, remove opportunities for other vectors to kind of, and other pests to hide out, and then that way improve the overall health of the oak tree forest on that site.
All right, so
So what I would like to propose is that the trees that are compromised or the ones that are dead, that we waive the 1-to-1, provided the owner of the property hasn't done something to kill the trees and manipulate them to be in a compromised state. I don't think we should hold them responsible for that. I think if they're compromised, by removing them, it's actually probably a benefit in not having a fire hazard. They've actually got a lot of other trees they have to worry about, so I think those we could deal with the recommended replacement value, but the ones that are dead and compromised, I would say that we just waive those.
So all the trees that are rated at kind of the C- or above would be subject to the replacement ratio, but a number of the ones that were recommended for removal, the replacement ratio would be waived because they don't meet the threshold for mitigation on that.
So the dead ones are not required to be replaced regardless?
No, that would be just for the health of the forest, and so it would not require any mitigation for those.
Okay, that's what I want to make sure, is just because when I read this, it appeared to me that they possibly were having to do a 1-to-1 on the ones that were dead, and that just didn't seem like that was quite right. And then my next question would be, could city staff bring this ordinance back for further review to make some amendments to that ordinance, or consider making amendments to the ordinance?
To what end?
What issue do you have with the ordinance at this point?
I think it's a little restrictive. So while I don't have a problem with there being some replacements put out there for trees that have to be removed, I think it just seems a bit restrictive. Kind of feel like maybe we're socking it to our people just a little bit for every opportunity we can to get more trees, and maybe we need a little bit more leeway.
So perhaps a study session in regards to the...
I would appreciate that if...
I think we talked about this at the last meeting regarding the church on California Street as well, specifically related to this oak tree permit. I think Mayor Pro Tem Duncan specifically mentioned the restrictive nature as it relates to the inner parts of the city of Yucaipa, and maybe the true intent of this resolution when it was passed in 96, being the outlined area of the city to maintain its rural views versus trying to protect an oak tree that might be the mid-block of 5th Street in the middle of town. So I think I agree with Councilman Thor. Maybe we can have it bring back just to make sure we clean up some of the wording and really maybe dive into its true intent.
I wholeheartedly disagree. I think that oak trees is part of the heritage of this area, and we should do everything we can to preserve that heritage. And it's not unreasonable to ask for these trees because it's very common up and down the state of California, not just here in Yucaipa. But if you go to Northern California, it's real common. People want to preserve this oak tree, which is part of the natural wetland or rainforest of California. It's an important asset, and I don't see a reason to modify. Now, I agree, we don't need to replace dead trees with live trees, but I don't think we should be loosen up the restrictions. We should preserve our California heritage, which includes these oaks.
Yeah, but in that light, when you make that comment that we need to preserve that heritage, even if that tree is dead, that's a one-to-one replacement, right?
Yeah, we're not replacing those.
I know, but in light of the heritage that you're talking about, wouldn't we want to replace those too? I mean, wouldn't we want to preserve that and plant those trees as well?
I think in a perfect world, but we have to be pragmatic about it. If we have living trees that we want to take out, which I think we should replace them appropriately. If a tree is dead, it's through this natural cycle. We don't know why it died, but they have a life like everything else. And I don't feel that we should impose any type of new plantings because of a dead tree. It's lived its cycle.
Well, can I ask Councilmember Thorpe, is your intention just to look at the ordinance and just kind of sift through it so we have a better understanding and see if maybe there are some tweaks and something that...
I would like to do a study session on it and then see if there's any way we can, I'm not saying throw everything out by any means, but I think from what I've read here and there, it seems like it's a bit restrictive. And I think since I've been on council, this is probably the second or third time oak trees have come up as far as an issue. And while I'm not trying to throw it away, the trees, but at the same time, it just seems like we're trying to kind of stick it to our people a little bit. Right. So I think we need to kind of keep them in mind with that ordinance as well.
Well, I'm not opposed to actually looking at it. I'm not necessarily in favor of making any changes, but I would be okay with just looking at it, so.
So I'm not sure, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Are you for, would you like to bring it back as a?
Well, I'm not sure what Councilmember Thorpe is asking. I tried to follow what you're saying. So there's 2 trees that need to be replaced 3 to 1, right?
According to what he's saying right now, is the trees that are on this particular piece of property, they're not doing a one-to-one replacement for those. But when you read through that ordinance, it appears to be very restrictive. So I'm thinking that we go through, we do a study on it and see if there's any way we can loosen it up a little bit, not saying get rid of everything. I think there's some important aspects to it, but it just seems, I don't know how else to describe it, it just seems to be very restrictive.
I think part of it too is that you plant 3 trees, there's a significant chance that 1 or more may die anyway. There's no guarantee that you plant a tree and it'll grow. And then if we have a 1-to-1, for example, and that tree dies, and now we've lost an oak. And so the 3-to-1, I think, is appropriate for the survival of the forest, and knowing through nature that not all trees will survive. I mean, that's just part of the cycle.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to bringing it back and discussing the ordinance altogether. I'm not opposed to that. I've never really, all I've done is talked about oak trees. I've never really had a chance to deal with the ordinance, so the ordinance predated me for sure. So I'm not opposed to bringing that to council.
It could be a learning session, something. Are you okay with that?
Bring it back and review it?
Justin, are you okay with bringing it back and just do a study session, a learning session? Should I call it a learning session or study session?
We will bring that back to you as a study session
Okay.
See if there are any adjustments that you want to make.
All right, so with that, is there a motion to accept item number 14?
I'll move.
I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. So that takes us to mayor and council member business reports. Do you guys have anything before we go on to reports?
Ray, is this the time to talk about city-county conference, or is that later?
Certainly,
Okay. Last Thursday, went to the city and county conference held at the Ontario Convention Center with the city manager and Caroline Velarde, who's not with us right now. It was a 4-hour, it was abbreviated. Normally it's a weekend or a couple days. This was abbreviated, and it gave updates on where the city and county, or where the county is going, what our finances, our fiscal future looks like. All in all, it's very, very productive. Again, abbreviated. Nothing spectacular came out of it, but according to the financial consultant, our future is not as bleak as the media would tell us. He had some very strong points in showing how growth is occurring in the Inland Empire especially, and that this is the time for us to take advantage of all the opportunities of growth. And yeah, it's looking actually pretty good when you see what his numbers are versus what the media tells you.
Don't believe everything you read, is that what you're saying?
Bottom line.
Okay. Anything else? Justin, do you have anything? Bob?
Well, just that the farmer's market, every Friday, they change the hours from 4 to 8, and it's pretty hot at 4, but by 6, 7, and 8, it's a pretty good event, and I would just encourage everyone to make some time to go on Fridays from 4 to 8, because if we don't support it, they're going to go away because they're not making a whole lot of money right now. I just encourage everyone to put that on your agenda.
All right. John, do you have anything? You're good? All right, so that's going to take...
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, before you go
Yes.
on. I would normally have shared this with you earlier this afternoon, just found out this afternoon that we received another piece of good news from our federal lobbyist that the Yucaipa Wilson 3 Basin project has been included in the Interior Appropriations Committee project funding list. Of course, that's just the first step of the process. We had previously announced that our Wildwood Interchange project had also been included in the bill for transportation. So $1 million on the interchange, at least at this point. It's not to the end of the legislative process by any means, and $1 million for the Yucaipa Wilson 3 Basin project. So both of those were very good pieces of news in the recent couple of weeks. This one just today, as a matter of fact, the Wilson 3 Basin project. So thought it would be worthy of note today.
Does that come from the lobbyist, or does that come from a representative?
It's this one, well, the information has been coming from the lobbyist, but the representatives have been very involved. Representatives from Obernoti's office have been very involved in the process, obviously, but our information is typically coming from our lobbyist firm.
All right. Good news. Thanks, Ray. So that takes us to item number 19. I believe this is Jennifer.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The item before you, you have 2 in-kind grant requests for upcoming fiscal year 21-22 from 2 local nonprofits here in the community. One is Grace Point Fellowship Church is requesting $788 to do a youth basketball program and sports program at the community center gym. And then Yucaipa Valley Art Association would like in-kind funds to use community center dance room to hold their monthly meetings. If you grant both requests, the balance in that in-kind balance would be $16,408. The recommendation is that you review and consider the applications before you this evening.
All right, so are there any questions for staff? If
I'll
not,
move approval.
I'll second.
all right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, so that takes us to item number 20. I believe is this Ray?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This item is a follow-on to a study session that we brought to council several meetings ago. With the direction received from the city council from that study session, we have before you a service walk policy that intends to recognize the long-term service of city council members, planning commission members, or other city-approved commission committees under the city's purview. And it's included in that is members that maybe had been on the planning commission for a number of years and then the city council for a number of years. So all of that would count toward the minimum number of years of service, which was directed to be 16 years. And so there are a few conditions here, fairly straightforward, that came also from that discussion. As I said, must have served on the council or one of the commission's committees for that period of time. Must have 16 years of exemplary service, of course. It could be broken or consecutive. Some folks have taken a few years off and come back to a commission or committee. And a nomination shall be made by a sitting council member through the city clerk's office for consideration by the full council. The selection can be made by a simple majority and determine the specific language to be placed on the plaque and approve the necessary funding. With that, staff is happy to answer any questions you may have this evening. What you have up before you is that same concept plan that you saw during the study session, with the idea being the service walk would be directly in front of the main entrance to City Hall, to the right-hand side there a little bit, series of boulders, enhanced landscaping, and the plaques for that recognized service would be on the boulders along that walkway to the right there. Again, happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for staff?
No, I think this is good. I think this is what we agreed upon the last time. So I'll go ahead and move approval.
I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Yeah, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, so that takes us to item number 21, and I believe this is Ben.
All right, thank you, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. This item before you is in regards to the confirmation of the American Viticulture Area Planning Committee members. As council may recall, at the December 2020 meeting, the City Council did appoint or select 2 council members, Bobby Duncan and David Avila, to serve as the council representatives for that. And then also appointed 3 at-large members, Daniel Morgan, James Tony Matlock, and Daniel Orrell. As part of the AVAPC, there's a number of other members comprised of different stakeholder groups, including cities, commissions, and other entities. And so as part of it, the Plan Commission had selected Christopher Markarian and Tony Hitz to be their representative. Trails and Open Space Committee had selected Christine Moeller. The EDAC, or Economic Development Advisory Committee, had selected Craig Heaps. And then the Yucaipa Valley Wine Alliance had selected Donna Snodgrass. And then the North Bench property owner with kind of a larger plot of land was selected or nominated by other property owners as Jonathan Weldy. I do want to note, we're bringing this as kind of formality. The AVA Planning Committee is going to be going in full swing. We had our first meeting for the Phase 2 a few days ago, and we'll be continuing to chart on forward with that. I do want to note as well, one of the at-large members, Daniel Morgan, did, after the preparation of this report, did submit a letter of resignation from the committee, and so the city has posted the service applications for that committee back, and so certainly encourage those in the public to apply if they're interested. We're a fun committee, it's a lot of fun conversations, but I'm looking forward to that. And then as just a general note as well, some of the committee members did want to potentially change the AVA Planning Committee name, and so we'll be discussing that and bringing that to City Council at a subsequent date. And so that's all I have, and happy to answer any questions.
All right, so are there any questions for staff?
Who did you say who resigned?
Daniel Morgan. So he resigned after this report had been prepared, and so with that, we have done the public notice. I believe we've already received an application, but certainly looking forward to those coming in.
All right, so is everyone good with the committee?
Yes.
With that, is there a motion to accept everyone except Daniel Morgan?
I make a motion that we accept everyone on the list except Daniel Morgan.
I'll second his motion.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, so that takes us to item number 22, and it's for me.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and council members. This item is for the right-of-way acquisition for the Avenue E Roundabout Intersections Project, specifically for the intersection of 4th Street and 5th Street. As council is aware, this project includes the phased construction of the single-lane roundabouts at 2nd Street and 3rd Street, which were completed last year. And then the dual lane roundabouts at Bryant, 4th and 5th Street intersections with Avenue E. And again, as council has heard, this project will replace the existing four-way stops along Avenue E and will allow Avenue E to remain 2 lanes between Bryant Street and 4th Street in the ultimate build-out condition. And the 2-lane configuration of Avenue E will ultimately save in construction costs and also impacts to residential properties along Avenue E. Phase 2 of the project includes the improvements at 4th Street and 5th Street. City Council did authorize staff to move forward with the right-of-way acquisition in March of this year. A total of 11 permanent right-of-way easements are required for Phase 2. 2 easement acquisitions were approved by council at the May 10th meeting earlier this year. And the third one is before you tonight. And the property, as you can see on the screen, is located south or along Avenue E on the south side, just east of 4th Street. The easement that is required is a 96 square foot easement along the front of that property. A real estate appraisal was completed to determine the value of that easement. And then the offer to purchase was sent to the property owner based on that appraisal. Staff did meet with the property owner following sending the offer to purchase. And the property owner did request a concrete driveway improvements in lieu of payment for that right-of-way easement. Staff has determined that the cost of constructing those concrete driveway improvements and along the frontage of their property and also transitioning to their garage, the cost of those improvements is equivalent in value to the total cost for the city to process the actual purchase of the easement. That amount is about $9,600. And if the city were to move forward with the purchase of that, the costs would include the escrow costs, additional staff time, additional appraisal costs, and then other fees that are involved with the acquisition process. If council approves this item tonight, those concrete driveway improvements that were requested by the property owner would be completed as part of the project when the project is constructed in the future. And the property owner has executed a letter of understanding that, and is also willing to provide the required right-of-way through an offer of dedication. The table on page 206 of the agenda includes the available funding for the project, and it also includes the total cost to date. Staff will continue to work with the other property owners and return to council in the near future with an update or a recommendation for the acquisition of the remaining easements. With that, staff recommends that City Council approve staff's recommendations as listed in the agenda report for this item. And that concludes my report, and staff is available for questions you may have.
All right, so are there any questions for staff?
I'll move to approve.
A second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, so that takes us to possible action on pending legislation. Ray, do you have anything?
I have nothing this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Just note that they are in session, so danger is out there. Okay, so that takes us to item number 23, and we do need to open the successor agency and the housing authority. So I'm not sure who's the chair.
He's.
I'll open the successor agency committee.
Okay,
And I'm housing.
you want to open?
I'll open the housing.
There you go. You've opened it. It's official. All right. So Ray, are you
I'm
take
going
this one?
to turn this over to Ryan, and then Andrew is also going to weigh in a little bit. And then if it please the mayor, I'd like to kind of finish up towards the end. So
Okay.
Ryan will start us off.
Thanks, Ray. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. The item before you this evening is the adoption of the budget for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2022. This includes the annual budget, the CIP budget, and various other related actions. The recommended budget is a responsible budget with some known structural imbalances, particularly in public safety and paramedic, continuing to manifest themselves. This budget reflects a strong general fund balance and healthy contingencies. As a reminder, particularly to new council members, staff does implement a conservative approach to budgeting full-time staff positions in that we budget all full-time staff positions at the top step, or that is the highest level of pay for any position, even though actual staff salaries are dispersed among various steps over their respective pay scales. I also want to point out there are a few service level options listed for council's consideration. As we go through some of these numbers, please keep in mind these numbers are not included in the numbers. We are requesting council's direction this evening on whether or not to include any of these options in the budget. Revised pages of those service level options have been distributed. So on the screen before you is a high-level overview of the general fund budget. This is a condensed version of the general fund budget summary, which is in the budget document, as well as page 288, I believe, in your agenda packet. I do want to note that this general fund does include expenses related to, well, all activity related to fire protection services. Since fiscal year 19, what was then the fire fund was combined with the general fund, and so this now contains both of those activities. As you can see towards the bottom, like a lot of local governments, we are including the use of American Recovery Plan Act, or ARPA, revenues as part of the budget. The intent of ARPA is to offset costs of the COVID-19 pandemic, including the replacement of lost revenues and returning services to pre-pandemic levels. We've been awarded approximately $8 million in ARPA funding. We are still anticipating further rules and guidance as far as the use of this funding. So we will return to council at a later date to discuss the additional use of these funds. We were also fortunate enough to estimate that spending of assigned fund balance that was originally approved for spending in fiscal year 2021 will not all be needed to balance fiscal year 21, and a significant portion of that is being recommended to be used here as a funding source in fiscal year 21-22. This next slide is a pie chart that kind of shows just kind of an overall picture of where the general fund revenues come from. Obviously, the biggest piece there is taxes and franchise fees. The largest portion of that is property taxes. These revenue sources are generally relatively stable outside of sales tax, which we know did take a hit related to the pandemic. The next slide is the other side of that coin. It's a pie chart that kind of shows where the money goes. The biggest slice of that pie there is on your left. It's for contracted services. So this includes our fire, police, as well as building and safety. That comes in just under the 50% mark, if you will, of our budgeted expenditures, which is generally considered to be a good benchmark so long as we can keep it under that 50%. This slide here is a year over year of general fund revenues. I will note in fiscal year 2019, you will see a jump that is, as I previously mentioned, the year that the fire fund was included with the general fund. So that jump there is simply a reflection of the fire fund activity being included in there. You will also notice fiscal year 22, your bar all the way to the right is the budgeted number, while fiscal year 21 is based on estimated actuals for the end of the current fiscal year. All the others to the left are based on historical numbers. Fiscal year 22, as I mentioned, is based on budget. The main bar there not including the use of ARPA revenue, so we did kind of add a little bit of in the blue there above that to show what the effect is of the ARPA funding on our year-over-year revenue. Similarly, this next slide is for the year-over-year in expenditures in the general fund. You'll see that same jump from 18 and 19 related to the inclusion of the fire fund in the general fund balance. And similarly, fiscal year 22 is based on budget. And as I mentioned previously, that is based on that conservative approach to budgeting at top step for full-time staff. So that is included in there as well. So now I'm going to turn it over to Andrew Hamilton, our finance consultant, who has been a big help in helping us put together this budget to kind of go over some of the enhancements in the budget presentation, as well as some of the highlights of the actual budget itself.
Thank you, Ryan. So just a few enhancements that we'd like to highlight to the budget presentation in the proposed budget. First is, it now mirrors the CAFR in the financial presentation. CAFR is our comprehensive annual financial report. The second item is fund balances are more transparent, and transfers now have their own separate section. Now to provide a little budget overview, you can see this is a responsible budget, as Ryan mentioned, with healthy contingencies. And DIF loans are projected to be approximately $4 million lower in the proposed budget compared to fiscal 2020. Additional highlights include approximately $200,000 in discretionary payment to CalPERS for the city's pension liability. And you can see the increases in the budget for public safety. This is one of the structural imbalances that Ryan mentioned, along with insurance and unfrozen positions. Additional highlights include the council-approved MOU increases, along with general fund transfers. First one, excluding the PMP, is approximately $1 million to capital funds, and then another $800,000 to the paramedic fund from the committed fire fund balance. That's another structural imbalance. So moving on to the unassigned fund balance projection, and again, this does not include any positive impacts due to ARPA. And you also will note that the change from the 30% general fund contingency to 20% in fiscal 21, everything else being equal, caused an increase in the fiscal 21 unassigned fund balance of approximately $3 million. If that makes sense. Over and above this unassigned fund balance are committed, assigned, contingencies, and the fire fund committed fund balance. This slide has the assigned fund balance, and you'll see fiscal 22, you can see that footnote at the bottom is approximately zero with the direction of the city council. Your intent to intentionally utilize the assigned fund balance for complete projects, unspent funds, also to finish projects by the end of the fiscal year. So moving to the general fund loan balance, there was a change in the accounting for short-term and long-term loans in fiscal 20, which increases the transparency. This is the reason why these figures are higher than previously seen. You'll see a significant decrease from fiscal 20 to fiscal 22. Much has to do with the fiscal 21 activity, and you'll see a slight increase in fiscal 22 from the fiscal 21 balance. And with that, back to Ryan.
So this next slide is a listing of the service level options for which we are requesting council direction as to what will be included in the final budget numbers.
So I'll go through those very briefly. Thank you. First is CAL FIRE Wildlands contract, which is, and Grant, Chief Malnowski can help with any details you may wish to hear relative to this. But generally speaking, call it an insurance plan for fires that emanate from those specific areas. For us, for example, the Wildwood Park is is a risk. It's within the city limits, and a fire starts there, and under certain circumstances, the city may be charged for costs associated with that fire. Some of our neighboring cities have entered into wildlands contracts recently, and our recommendation is to consider that this evening. Second item is a
Ray,
grant.
is that an annual cost, or is that?
Yeah, that's an annual cost.
Is an annual cost?
Second item is a grant administrator / public information officer. As Andrew touched on briefly, I'll talk a little bit more about that as we get to a couple more slides, but we continue to aggressively pursue grant funding. We continue to have to work on that administration, those ongoing requirements for notifications or for reporting. And of course, the effort to seek reimbursement for those grant-funded projects as well is a growing effort, has been a big effort in our organization, but continues to grow as our expenditures in the grant arena continue to grow. It's a good problem to have, but nevertheless, it's a challenge. And so we consider about 50% of this position. The other 50% would be the leadership, if you will, in pushing out information to the community through social media and other newsmeer and other sources to get information out to the community and back from the community to help the council make those important decisions throughout the year. The third is cybersecurity monitoring. This is a newer request. Wasn't discussed a lot in our goals and objectives process, other than just the general discussion relative to IT. But it's become a real concern in communities, a real issue for some of our neighbors and other cities in the area. And this would be a first phase using consulting service to help us fortify our cybersecurity. Sheriff Service Specialist, it was discussed in the goals and objectives and prioritized. This would be a position that would be primarily focused on community policing, all of the things that we have been able to kind of roll out again after COVID-19 guidelines have subsided a little bit for us. Pickleball Court, talked about that certainly in the goals and objectives process. The plan is to design and build a pickleball facility, I should say. It's a number of courts, 12 courts. We were reminded next to the parking lot on the west side of the parking lot in the community park. And then finally, an additional deputy as we continue to strive to be one of the safest, continue to be one of the safest communities in San Bernardino County.
So these next couple of slides kind of give an overview of the various recommended actions that you'll see as part of your agenda report. Recommendation 1, in addition to the adoption of the annual and CIP budgets, does include an amendment to the fund balance policy, as well as a proposed new budget policy. The fund balance policy amendment is simply to clarify that as per past practice, the emergency contingency, which is currently calculated as 20% of operating expenses, is to be calculated on operating expenses that are not fire-related. This is an important distinction now that we've combined fire fund with general fund, just to clarify how that calculation is being made. It also proposes a budget policy, which better defines and improves certain budget practices and proposes delegation of authority for certain budget adjustments. Kind of as an aside on that note, staff is preparing to propose an update to the city's purchasing rules and related authoritative documents, which may include the purchasing policy and the municipal code, to use dollar amounts that would be consistent with the thresholds that are being used here in the budget policy. Staff will bring this to the council at a later date. Other recommended actions here include resolutions to adopt the appropriations limit, the Measure I 5-year CIP, the 5-year CP&A, Capital Project Needs Analysis, approving projects funded by SB1 funding, an amendment to the interfund loan agreement the general fund has with the DIF funds, as well as resolutions for each the successor agency and the Yucaipa Housing Authority to adopt their respective budgets.
So I wanted to take a minute and talk a little bit about, give council just a little more detail in the community about the short-term versus long-term loan issues that has evolved. Council, I'm sure recalls that a number of formal loan agreements, number one, the loan agreement is a formal document. Number two, council has made a number of formal loans pursuant to the agreement now, but predating the agreement. Those include loans between the general fund and the public facility fund for City Hall, for example. They include, for the developer's share, if you will, the new resident share of City Hall cost that was budgeted back in 2003, built back in 2004, may have been even budgeted in 2002. The same approach was used for the police station, where the general fund created a formal loan for the new resident share of the police station cost, YPAC, fire station, even the interchange had an element of that formal loan. So all of that in aggregate created a total loan amount over 20 million, 22 million from developers ultimately owe the general fund. And this past year, through the loan agreement, we have started repaying that general fund loan in earnest. Had been making payments over the years, but not to the level that we have since the formal loan reimbursement agreement had been established by council. I think last year was something like $700,000 in reimbursement to that to the general fund for those loans. Well, in addition, there has been a change this past year in how we, the finance group, addresses the, and this came from kind of the audit report over the last several years, from the audit discussions, if you will, in that there is also a kind of a short-term informal loan that happens with each and every grant project. Each and every grant project, the Fremont Street Bridge, for example, we completed a year ago, a little over a year ago. That project was about $3 million. Grant funding works such that the agency has to pay for that project up front and then get reimbursed. So the design was done, we got reimbursed. The construction's done, we're getting reimbursed. And so there's a short-term carry associated with a project like that, and typically that is carried by the general fund. So we now show that short-term loan in the loan fund balances in addition to the longer-term loan. Again, a nice problem to have. We got grant funding for the Fremont Street Bridge. It's 88% by the federal, paid for by the federal grant, 12% by our community and developers as well. But that has to be shown in our accounting system. Several years ago, 3 years ago, those short-term loans weren't shown in our accounting system other than the annual audit report. It all is shown in the annual audit report. So we wanted to kind of explain that, and we thought maybe this diagram would be a way to do that. Where it's a little bit more complicated, perhaps, that it starts with a general fund that loans the, in this case, this is traffic facility funds, either the street maintenance fund, the Measure I fund, or road maintenance fund. And then once those projects are built, the percentage of the project that is grant funded gets reimbursed back to the traffic facility fund and then back down to the general fund at the bottom. So it starts in the general fund. General fund makes the short-term loan for the project, at least the part that's funded by grant funds, and it ends with the general fund in that repayment is made after the project's complete. It's a little easier, the next slide if you would please, Andrew, a little easier when it is the non-traffic facility fund, a little less complicated. General fund loans through various grant fund programs to the drainage fund or the public facility fund or the park fund. And at the end of the day, when we get the grant reimbursement, it's paid back through that development impact fee program to the general fund. So don't know if that helps or not, but it's a way to kind of visualize how the cash flow works, which is now in our budget and in our CAFR. This is the area that Andrew talked about. We have greater consistency now between our audit report and our budget in that those numbers used to show up in our audit report, still do. Now they show up in our budget as well. I'd also like to, we'll go to the next one, just kind of finish with this. Our total, I guess our new term, I used to use undesignated fund balance. That's not really it used to be an accounting term, not so much an accounting term anymore. Even the term that we're using now is not a kind of a formal accounting term, but call it a discretionary fund balance. So if you add up the $1 million rainy day fund with the 20% set aside fund, could be 30%, and you just reduce the unassigned fund balance by that same amount, but it all goes to that bottom line, which is the total. So it's projected to be about 25 million in discretionary fund balance at the end of this fiscal year, June 30th, 2022. Our estimate right now is about 24 million, June 30th, 2021. Those are strong numbers for a $30 million operating budget. And so, especially after this last fiscal year that was a little difficult with the 4 or 6 frozen positions and all of that relative to the COVID-19 impacts. But happy to report that the fiscal year 2021 budget is balanced with the little CARES Act funding, and your recommendation for fiscal year 21-22 is also balanced with the ARPA funding for just the lost revenue and the 6 frozen positions. Both are eligible expenses. Also want to point out one other thing. I don't know if you have another on there. Yeah, this is a general fund balance. You've seen this graph before, but it shows all the different elements and then the total. And again, going back decades, our approach has been to save for projects and build projects, save for projects and build projects, and to the extent that there's capacity. And so that's why you see that fluctuation. And if you go back to 2003, you'll see that same kind of fluctuation. But the generally speaking, very conservative levels. Go ahead. Okay, so I wanted to make one other point, and Andrew touched on it as well. Part of the funding for this fiscal year includes, part of the expenses for this fiscal year, let's start there, includes those service level options that were carried forward from the current fiscal year to the budget fiscal year that is in front of you today, fiscal year 21-22. So those expenses are in the budget. The revenues, the savings, if you will, those funds that we saved over the years that are ultimately used to offset those expenses aren't in the budget. They're in the kind of the bottom line that ends up in the, under the line we call it, I guess, that ends up in the unassigned fund balance or the fund balance. So, but those expenses are in there. Projects like the video surveillance cameras that we didn't quite get to this fiscal year, but I know Jason is getting really close to getting to them next year. So the right after the first of this fiscal year. So with respect to the ARPA funding, we'd like to come back, like I said earlier, in probably 30 to 60 days. Hopefully the guidelines have settled down a little bit at that point. Maybe there are a couple of other things that council wishes to discuss that aren't ARPA funding at that time, ARPA funded at that time. Certainly that's an option. That's an opportunity for kind of a follow-up service level option discussion. I want to point out that the service level options that are listed in your report that we talked about, we handed out some clarifications. There were some inconsistencies between the summary and the detail sheets, so those are all consistent now. And those are all funded, at least recommended for funding, if approved, from either the fire fund committed balance, which is the Wildlands contract. The others would come, we believe, from the unassigned and assigned fund balance, primarily the unassigned fund balance. Wanted to point out that Andrew and his team work for Misty Chang. They've been helping us now for something like 18 months. We'll come back to you with an update on that relationship. We still have 3 unfilled positions in finance. Finance happens to be one of the areas that it seems like folks got used to working telecommuting, and we had a little trouble convincing folks to come back to the workplace again. But we're working at it, and we'll come back to you with an update on that contract. But I wanted to thank Andrew and his team for all the work that they've done in the budget and the audit report that you'll see here shortly, et cetera. Budget message, I just want to point out that it should be $130,000 on the PIO. Grant Administrator will update that. And then I just want to point out that part of the agenda item this evening is to approve the budget and allow staff to give staff authorization to update the budget document to include those service level options that you approved this evening. So our plan, our recommendation this evening is to approve the budget with that ability to simply go forward and update the document based on the input that we received this evening about those service level options.
All right. Was that it?
Oh, thank you. One more thing.
Go ahead.
I think I got the same note, both sides. I forgot to mention that this was reviewed by the Finance Committee earlier today, and they are recommending it for approval. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, so we do have 7 different items here. Justin, you look like you have something. You have something? Yes, actually, I was going to do that right now. So we have 7 different items. We're going to go ahead and take item number 7 first, but Councilmember Beaver just reminded me that in the Budget Committee, we had discussed, we took an action on the City Council at the beginning of the pandemic where we had a 20% reserve, emergency reserve, and we brought that down from 30 to 20, and now that we have the ARPA funding and we're getting out of the pandemic, if we can slowly, or not slowly, I guess, as fast as we can, return that 30% back to the budget.
Absolutely, and just for the record, that would not change the total fund balance at all, would not change the reserves, because we're not allowed to increase reserves through ARPA funding, but it just reallocates elements of our reserves from basically unassigned fund balance to committed fund balance to that 30% component.
Right.
So absolutely, we can come back to you with that.
Is everyone okay with that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I get it. All right. So we do have 7 different items for City Council. I think what we're going to do is we're going to take item number 7, which are the SLOs first. And I know that there are 2 items that Councilmember Thorpe needs to recuse. So we're going to go ahead and do those first.
You're going to do those 2 for the Sheriff's Department first?
We'll do the 2 police SLOs.
All right, so I'll recuse myself now then.
Can I ask a question about that?
Is it about police, or you want to wait? Or?
No. Just, okay.
Go ahead.
No, not police.
Okay. All right, we're going to
Just-
go ahead and.
Just for the record, Councilmember Thorpe is an employee of the Sheriff's Department, and in light of the conflict issues, he's unable to participate in matters that would amend or require an amendment to the sheriff's contract, which these 2 items could, depending on the direction. So he won't be participating on these
Okay.
items.
All right, so we have 2 items. It's item number 4 and item number 6 when it comes to service level options. Are there any questions or a motion? We need to take an action on those 2.
I motion we approve number 4 and number 6, the additional deputy and the sheriff's service specialist.
I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to accept item 4 and 6. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, so we'll go ahead and finish the remainder of the service level options, 1, 2, 3, and 5. Are there any questions? Bob, you have something?
I do. Who's doing this? How are we doing cybersecurity now? If that's a really big issue, how's that being managed now?
Is Jason here? Oh, Jason will answer that question here shortly.
So right now, cybersecurity takes place in the form of, we have endpoint security. We have some security measures in the Microsoft Office environment as well. And what that does is the endpoint security kind of protects each workstation. So if something happens on a workstation, you have some some security on that workstation that'll alert us and let us know that there's some bad stuff going on. Also, in Microsoft Office, as we all know, we're getting lots of weird emails and attempts to get our passwords. We have controls in there that also alert us when there's risky users or risky sign-ons, that sort of thing. We can see if people are signing in from areas that they shouldn't be or that wouldn't be normal for those people, and so we check on those. And then, of course, just training the users as much as we can from just kind of an email campaign. When we have issues, I just send out notes and emails to users saying, hey, this is what's going on, be careful, be aware of these issues.
And what does this $55,000 do for us?
So the first thing it does is it ingests just about every log that we have on almost every device that we have, and watches every device that we have to see if there's any anomalies that happen. It uses machine learning, so kind of AI, to watch that. And then we also have a team of, it's called a SOC, a Security Operations Center, with a team of experts that are also watching those logs daily. If they see something strange or the machine learning sees something strange, it alerts us. There's also included with that is an email campaign, and we can send out emails at random to different users or to all users and see if we have users that might need some training. If they click the wrong button or do something that they probably shouldn't have done, we can quickly send them a link to a video that says, hey, this is why you probably shouldn't have clicked this link. Kind of like I do now, but it's just a little bit more refined. So this would be the first step for me in my plan moving forward. It's a big step. It is expensive, but it's vital. I think Justin can attest to what happened in Azusa was largely in part because they didn't have these kind of controls in place. And the biggest part of implementing the cybersecurity is also you're going to get hit eventually, and your response to those hits are the most important thing. They're still working on getting their systems back up. It's been, 6 months? They don't even have MDCs in their cars yet, correct?
No.
So it's huge. Also included with that is some cybersecurity insurance, some additional to what we have as well. So if we do get hit with ransomware or something to that effect, and we have data loss or data breach, that can be mitigated somewhat by that cybersecurity insurance as well. Or in some cases, you pay the ransom to get your data back.
Okay, thank you. And who's currently doing the grant administration?
It is a hodgepodge. Public Works, of course, has a lot of the grants under them. Finance has got more and more engaged over the last 6-8 months, years' time in the process. But this would be a person that kind of takes the lead in that collaboration that includes the other departments. You know, Ben is doing more and more grant-funded work now, Public Works is. So this would be at least half-time a person that would kind of lead that collaboration between the department where the grant is resides, if you will, and the finance department that is working on the financial elements of the grant funding.
Didn't we have that lady that, did I forget her name? down
Mary,
there?
yeah. Yeah, she left us. She's fully retired now, basically.
Oh, she's no longer with us.
She was a contract employee.
She was contract. She wasn't full-time. And she was probably 50-60% time for a period of time there. She was great. She was a little uncomfortable working at City Hall with the COVID stuff and all that. And she just decided to retire.
And who's doing the public information outreach right now?
Another hodgepodge. And quite frankly, we're not doing as well as we could be. I think Megan and her team is doing a great job. They pivoted during the COVID-19 period and did a lot of outreach for us in that area. But we just need to do more with projects. We need to do more with the planning efforts that are going on, the long-term. You think of the long-term planning efforts that are all happening at one time. Housing element, freeway corridor specific plan, AVA implementation. So there's a lot of information that needs to get out to the community and a lot of information we'd like to get back from the community. So
You know, it's almost like we actually need a PIO staff, not just one person, of all the things that are going on right now. It's not uncommon, as you guys know. You guys have a cadre of people who just put out information all the time through the newspapers, through the radio, through the internet, social media. It can be it's a full-time job. It can easily work into a full-time job for a couple, 3 people, if you do it right.
I think also during the pandemic and the civil unrest that we saw, Yucaipa, we had the mayor at the time being the face of the city, but I think having that full-time face and voice of the city with like you said, the cadre of staff, I think Megan's team can fall into that and help out this public information officer with a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff. But having a voice of the city of Yucaipa and a face for those people to see when we need to push out information relative to an evacuation or some other horrible thing is paramount, especially this age where people not just expect but almost demand to have information right now.
Okay, so with that, John, do you have anything?
Nope.
Are you good? Okay.
I'm good.
All right, so with that, we do have the remainder, 1, 2, 3, and 5 service level options. We want to take action on those?
I'll move. Also move.
All right, John.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, so now we do have to take action on items 1 through 6 for the city council. Are there any questions in regards to item 1 through 6? If
I'll
not-
move to approve.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second.
Mr. Mayor, if I might just add,
Yes.
as far as Councilmember Thorpe, on any of these actions, he's intending to recuse on any of the items that relate to the 2 service level options related to the sheriff's department, just for the record.
Just for the record, okay. All right, so we do have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, so I guess you guys need to adjourn.
We'll need to vote.
We have to vote.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So
You're
we'll
right.
need
You got to take a motion.
a motion for the successor agency's approval of 2021-22 budget.
I'll move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Housing Authority,
So move.
a
Second.
motion for that, for the budget?
Yep.
I'll second.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
All right, did you
Okay.
get,
And we'll close that hearing now for the Housing Authority.
you closed? All right, and you're closed? All right. Now we're official. All right, so that takes us to item number 24, and this is a public hearing, so I will open the public hearing and turn it over to, not sure who. Andrew, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council. As you're probably very well aware, in 1991, the City Council formed the city's.
Well, you said you were very well aware of 1991, so that was,
Okay.
I thought that was kind of funny, so I,
It's been around a long time. The city's Landscaping and Lighting Maintenance District, number 1, the LMD. The purpose is to provide a funding source for maintenance, energy, anything that has to do with landscaping, lighting, and maintenance. The items in the LMD zone include public landscaped areas, public drainage facilities, and streetlights within the new subdivision. This one item here is part of the annual process to approve the assessments, which fund the LMD. The first meeting of this 2-part process occurred at the last city council meeting on June 14th. And tonight, the recommended action is number 1, to conduct the public hearing. Number 2, approve the application of the adjustments as stated in the staff report. And number 3, approve the credit of funds as listed in the staff report. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, so I do not have any public comments. So with that, I'll close the public hearing and open it up for council discussion. Is there any questions for staff? Am I doing that in the right order? I'm trying.
I'll move approval.
All right,
I'll second.
we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, so we have another public hearing. It's item number 25. And this is for me. So I will open the public hearing.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor and council members. To continue with the LLMD, this item is regarding the annexation of tract map 19901 into the city's landscaping and lighting maintenance district, or as Zone SS. All subdivision projects are required to be annexed into an LLMD or to set up a homeowners association to provide a funding mechanism for the maintenance of the certain areas within that development that are for the benefit of that development. The developers of this tract, they wish to annex this tract into the LLMD. As you can see on the exhibit, this subdivision is located between Douglas Street and Fremont Street, just north of Avenue E, and includes 22 lots. By annexing this tract into the LLMD, each of those lots will be annexed the amount of $312.38 per year, and that will be for the maintenance of the landscaped area, the drainage system areas, and for the energy costs for 3 streetlights. The developer's engineer has prepared an engineer's report to provide a cost estimate for those yearly maintenance costs. And an excerpt of that report is included in your agenda packet for consideration. Consistent with Proposition 218, it is necessary for the owners of the 22 lots to vote on the annexation. A ballot was sent to the owners 45 days in advance of this public hearing tonight. As part of the annexation process, the city must conduct a public hearing regarding the proposed assessment and also consider any and all protests against that assessment. The city shall not impose the assessment if there is a majority protest. 22 ballots were received or were returned to the city, with all 22 supporting the assessment. Now, staff's recommendation is that the city council conduct a public hearing and subsequently adopt resolution number 2021-21, approving the annexation of tract map 19901 into the city's LLMD number 1, and adopt the methodology for the assessment and enact that assessment. That concludes my report, and staff is available for questions.
All right, so I do not have any public comment at this point. Is there anyone here from the applicant? No? All right, so I will close this public hearing and then open it up for council discussion. So are there any questions or comments for staff?
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, with that, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, so that does take us to announcements. Anything, you guys? John, you have anything?
No.
David?
No, just get ready for 4th of July. I think 4th of July is Sunday, right? And we still have fireworks. Yes, yeah, we're gonna have some fireworks and even some pyrotechnic displays. So, so it's gonna be a great weekend. I'm glad that we're opening up and just traveling around town. I see robust purchasing from the restaurants and the different shops and stuff like that. It's very hopeful. I'm pleased as punch.
Awesome. Bob, go ahead.
And we have a rodeo August the 6th. I saw a big stack of tickets today, and so that's going to be a big deal, a big deal. And then remember the farmer's market every Friday. That's
All right, Justin, you have anything?
Nothing, sir.
Nothing? All right, so we do have a closed session.
Anybody want to mention the Chick-fil-A?
Oh, it's open. Oh. I ate there. Still there.
what was that?
A brand new Chick-fil-A in town.
Ah,
Wait, what was the official date that it opened? 24th. The 24th, yeah, and I know it's already,
The lines are long, but they're
Yeah, the
very
lines-
fast.
are they?
Oh, you get through it very quickly. I was surprised.
Have we heard word on Dutch Brothers?
It's right around the corner, I think, July 5th, 6th, 7th? 7th, July 7th.
Awesome, very cool. All right, so that takes us to closed session.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. We have two items on the agenda this evening. That's conference with labor negotiator. The negotiators are the mayor and the mayor pro tem regarding the unrepresented city manager position. And then also public employee performance evaluation for the city attorney, and we don't expect reportable action this evening.
All right, so with that, we will adjourn this council meeting.